What is up, everyone? Hope everything is well. So today I want to talk about something that I find quite interesting, and this is regarding AI. I don't know if you have heard of it. Like ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, and a myriad of different systems. Although we use the term AI to describe these systems, that is not really what they are. They are more precisely large language models. But these systems are more just trained on large amounts of data. So why do they seem so human-like, almost like they have consciousness? To test this, there is one test called the Turing Test, created by Alan Turing in 1950. This is a way to see if a machine can hold a conversation so well that a person can't tell whether they are speaking to a human or to a computer. Every year or so, they hold a competition with a bunch of judges to see if the judge can spot the imposter. So they basically put a bunch of actual human people, mixed in with one AI system. In the past, when the systems weren't as advanced, they used tricks such as repeating some of the questions back to the judges, giving the illusion that the person was mentally ill or thinking about the questions or struggling to understand, or using a Ukrainian boy-like system that mimicked how a foreigner would speak English. Well, it shows how well AI can mimic human behavior. It doesn't actually prove whether an AI is conscious or understands what it is saying. It may just be giving a convincing answer without really being aware of it. But the AI systems of today have gotten much more advanced, and they don't have to use these types of tricks to get past. But there is this one statement that is quite thought-provoking, and if I can say so myself, quite disturbing. What is scarier? An AI system that keeps passing the Turing test, or an AI system that deliberately keeps failing it? So before we get into the nitty-gritty of all of the technical details, let's start with how we can think of the term understanding. For an AI to be conscious, it should have some concept of understanding, or to understand what something means. As we will see, it cannot really understand. Large language models works basically in the following manner. There's an interesting thought experiment that we can look at called The Chinese Room by John Searle. So imagine someone is sitting in a closed-off room. With them, they have a Chinese dictionary or a Chinese rulebook. People outside of the room feed in phrases in Chinese, and then the person in the room matches the Chinese symbols with the correct definition or meaning and then gives back the response. Now, from outside of the room, it might look like the person in the room has an understanding of Chinese, but in reality, it is just someone tracing the corresponding lines and the corresponding symbols from the book without ever knowing what he is really putting on paper. This is how an AI model works, and thus we can conclude that they aren't really conscious and they don't really understand what they are putting out. So where does this leave us when it comes to AI consciousness? Well, as mentioned before, we don't really know where we stand with human consciousness itself. So how can we say if something is conscious or not if we ourselves don't really know how to define it? All that the human brain really is a system that takes in information and evaluates it in terms of how useful it can be and where to use it. And then, by a few processes of random selection, we act on said information. But that just sounds a lot like a large language model. Does that make us any different from the current AI systems that we use? LLMs work by taking your input phrase, then scanning their databases for matching information, and then using mathematical formulas to predict the most likely and relevant words to form a coherent response. Now, humans do this in the same way, but this formula is one that was formed by evolution and experience. Our processes are also a lot simpler, and we use a type of prediction model because we don't have these huge data centers to pull information from. So this is where general AI comes in. Now, general AI is an AI that doesn't need a huge data center. It can operate like a human that runs off that runs consciousness of Burger King and Monster energy drinks. So if we really dig deep and try to define consciousness, human consciousness, we run into another problem, because there are a few different schools of thought that we can follow. For instance, you get people who are materialists. That is, those who believe that the mind is entirely made up of matter. They argue that the mind is either predetermined by physical processes or is a result of random firings of neurons, from which consciousness somehow arises. Even though we don't fully understand how this works or how consciousness can emerge from just random brain activity, materialists still hold that consciousness is purely a product of the physical brain. This explanation of materialism is, of course, a very simplified version of the debate. So, on the other side of the argument, there are people who believe that consciousness is made up of soul and matter. They call themselves dualists. Other people believe in Panpsychism, the belief that consciousness is a basic feature of the universe, like space, time, or energy, saying that even very simple things, like atoms and electrons, have some tiny amount of awareness. And then human consciousness is just a complex combination of these basic mind-like properties. So can we ever really say whether an AI system can ever truly be conscious, or maybe already is conscious? Well, I think if the mind is truly material, then yeah, sure, But if the mind consists of something other than matter, then obviously no. And that is weird, because you see yourself as the only conscious being. You can only prove that you yourself is conscious, or can only be sure about your own consciousness. For example, how can we prove that other people are conscious? Because they can only mimic consciousness for all that you know. Like, for example, are dogs conscious? Because they sure do mimic a lower form of consciousness very well. I mean, some people love their dogs more than they do their fellow humans. And dogs are bred across millennia to have an instinctive urge to love and like humans, a symbiotic relationship, if you will. But does that make a dog conscious? I don't really know what to make of this. Maybe human consciousness is just something intrinsic to us. Even if you build a robot representing consciousness atom for atom, will we still see it as our equal? I don't know who said this, but obviously feel free to correct me. But can AI truly make art? Because at the pace it is progressing, it will be able to paint better paintings than us, write better books than us, and tell better stories. But will it ever truly be art? There was this one instance where an ex-user posted a lesser-known painting of a Monet and claimed that he made it with AI, and that people should critique it and argue why AI can never truly make a Monet. The people passionately voiced their opinions, yet unbeknownst to them, they were being taken for fools. It just shows how unreliable we are when it comes to identifying true art and true creativity, and then to some extent, consciousness. So will AI ever be able to create art? I don't think so, because I think we make a fundamental error when we view art apart from its creator. Art and its creator go hand in hand. And on that note, AI can never create art on its own because it has no reason to do so. Crime and Punishment was written with a burning existential desire. Starry Night was painted with a lifetime of pain behind it. But this obviously leaves a lot of open questions, like what is really meant by the word art? And what is really the meaning behind the emotions that create art? Can anything create through emotions be considered art? Are emotions just a mixture of genes and predetermined neurons firing? If we put AI through a lot of pain and anguish and then ask it to create art, will it then be considered art? Will it then see an actual reason to create art? We are undeniably entering a new era of technological development, and only time will reveal what humanity will make of it. If you made it this far into the video, please like and subscribe. Please leave your thoughts and opinions, and I'll catch you on the next one.